If you had one wish, one opportunity to obtain anything you wanted, what would it be? Would it be to see a loved one again? A superpower? Or infinite wealth? But what if I told you that there was a cost to your wish? A big cost. The cost of time. Everyone you know grows older than you. Friends you made in high school are now adults, closer to death while you remain the same as if nothing happened. Would you still want to obtain that wish? Well, The Tunnel of Summer, The Exit of Goodbyes explores that possibility. I wanted to talk about this movie because I haven't seen it being talked about much on the internet, and besides, I like this story. The first part of this video will be fairly spoiler-free and won't give any big plot points away, but later on I will get into deep spoilers for the rest of the video, but I'll let you know when that time comes. The two main characters are Kaoru Tono and Anzu Hanashiro. Kaoru lives in a rural town by Kaseki Station. He constantly lives in regret over the death of his little sister Karen, and wishes he could just go back in time to make things right. But one day a new student arrives in his class, which is Anzu Hanashiro. They both end up finding a tunnel called the Urashima Tunnel. The tunnel is allegedly able to grant them any wish they want, but it comes at the cost of time. You see, the tunnel is like a whole other dimension. Once you're inside the tunnel, time speeds up in the outside world. Mere minutes in the tunnel are days in the outside world. The depth of the tunnel is unknown, so if you're willing to locate the end of the tunnel, it could possibly be several years in the outside world. It shows the price you have to pay for your wish. Now, I found out about this story through the light novel. I was in my local Barnes & Nobles and found the light novel. The synopsis intrigued me, so I gave it a read and fell in love with it. After finishing it, I found out the movie was going to air soon, so I wanted to talk about this movie from someone that's read the original light novel. The thing I love the most by far about this story is the concept of the tunnel. I personally never came across a story that incorporates time travel in this style, and I love how the characters try to challenge the tunnel's system. They come up with clever ways to understand how fast time moves in the tunnel, when the time warp begins, and much more. Now, I like how the movie visualized the tunnel, as well as the voice acting between the main characters, and how the movie is as a whole, but I honestly think the light novel is 5 times better than the movie. This is where I'll start getting into spoilers and comparing the movie and the light novel, so I suggest you watch the movie before continuing this video. Now then, in my opinion, a lot of the problems with this movie aren't exactly their fault, because you can only put so much into a movie. But I think if the movie was a little over 2 hours, it could have been able to flesh out the characters some more. Because in a light novel, it goes really in depth into Kaido and Anzu's relationship. In the movie, they're seen and pretty much never shown again, especially with Koharu. Here's one big scene that was completely cut out of the film. In the movie, Koharu played the role of the bully to Anzu, but she eventually apologizes for her actions towards her very briefly. In the light novel, however, things are quite different. Anzu hitting Koharu plays out pretty much the same, but the scene lasts a lot longer. Koharu runs out of the classroom with tears in her eyes after being punched. Anzu didn't care at all and considered her a crybaby for her actions. Koharu didn't return until later that day with her alleged boyfriend. He had an intimidating figure and honestly looked like a delinquent. He asked to meet with Anzu, and with a little force she obliged. And out of fear, Kaoru and his buddy Shohei follow them without them knowing. The delinquent takes Anzu to behind the gymnasium and wanted to teach her a lesson for hitting Koharu. This leads to the two to fight, and it was honestly a pretty dope fight. However, Anzu wasn't doing so good as she was getting kicked while she was on her knees. It was to the point that it even made Koharu feel sympathetic for Anzu and told him to stop. Keep in mind, Kaido and his buddy Shohei were watching this whole time, and Shohei decided to finally step in and call out saying a teacher was coming. But this distraction led to Anzu stabbing the delinquent with the pen over and over again. There was pretty much nothing left he could do, and Kaido and Shohei ended up breaking the fight. After eventually calming down, Kaido tries to converse with her, but she was very uninterested and rude. Kaido was concerned for her, since she was clearly hurt, but she said she can take care of herself and didn't need his advice. This made Kaido say, "Sure, maybe you feel that way, but I guarantee you're gonna make other people worry about you when you come home with massive welts on your face." Anzu replies saying, "Yeah? Who am I gonna worry? Maybe your parents? Duh. I don't have any parents." Wow, lucky you. This made her curious and asked what that was supposed to mean, and Kaido immediately regret what he said. But the conversation was cut short with Kaido about to be late for class. Once Kaido goes to the tunnel for the second time, like in the movie, that's when he meets with Anzu again, like you see in the film. The difference is that in the movie, they interact for the first time in the tunnel, but in the light novel, they already met prior. And I think that's very important, because it gives more context to Anzu's character, which makes the romance hit harder later into the light novel. There's a lot of conversations between the two, which makes them feel way more fleshed out in the light novel. Out of all the scenes that was cut, I believe the whole scene with her and the delinquent should have stayed, since it would make her introduction hit harder. There's a whole lot of cut content I could talk about, especially with the big change in Koharu's character, but we'll be here all day if I talk about all the changes. If enough of you want me to make a second video about this film and go more in depth on specific scenes that were left out, then just let me know. I don't want to make it sound as if the movie is bad and that they cut so many important things, because that happens when adapting a book or a light novel into a movie. You only have so much time, so you have to put in what'll be most worthwhile. But I still think the studio could have done a little better. If you've only watched the movie, I highly suggest reading the light novel, because there's so much more meat and development in the story. Now let's talk about the controversy. At the end of the film, Kaido comes back from the tunnel with Anzu much older, and that's when they finally get together. There are people out there that find it kind of weird since Anzu is a young adult while Kaido is still a teenager. In my opinion, I honestly think it's no big deal. The age of consent in Japan is 16, and dog, with this sort of situation, there's no way they just aren't gonna get together anymore because she's just a little older. And I mean, if you want to be technical, he may have the body of a teenager, but by the law, he's the same age as Anzu, so nobody is really going to know. And besides, could you blame the two? They're in a very unique situation. To me, that's like true love. One thing this movie does great though is the music. When the trailers were coming out, I constantly heard the song Pre-Romance by Ale, if that's how you say it, being played. And it's quite a bop. Same with the song Katapo, which was played near the beginning of the movie. In the end, the movie portrays the tunnel well and decently gets the main point of the story across. But it could have been a whole lot better. Or maybe I just love the light novel a little too much. Thank you for watching. If you've made it till the end, thank you for watching the whole way through. I absolutely didn't expect the Dangers in My Heart video to do as well as it did, and the comments were so nice, so thank you all so much. I hope you all stay tuned for more awesome videos. But anyways, subscribe if you want to see more, and Adachi out.